Welcome back to the Oscar Project Podcast, the show where I discuss Oscar-nominated films year by year. I am your host, Jonathan Eacherberg, and today I'm bringing you an interview with Zac Lazarou, director of the short film The Undertakers, which was selected as a finalist for the 2024 Student Academy Awards. Before I jump into the interview, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast player so you can get all the newest episodes as soon as they are released. If you like the interview and want to hear more, please consider leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Zac Lazarou is a zoologist turned documentary filmmaker who recently completed his MA at the National Television Film School. He joins me on the podcast to talk about his short film, The Undertakers, which was selected as a finalist in the documentary category of the 2024 Student Academy Awards. Zac, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So your film looks at the rescue, rehabilitation, and conservation efforts of a group in Africa called Vulpro that works to help injured vultures. Where did you learn about this organization, and what prompted you to decide to make your film about them and the birds that they care for?
I guess this begins with what prompted me to approach vultures as a subject for the film. And that was, I guess, during studying zoology, I discovered through reading papers that these villainous birds are, incredible ecosystem engineers, and they're actually one of the most important species on the planet. And I was kind of blown away by that because we're so ingrained in our culture to kind of see them as these disgusting animals that, live off the dead, and think of, an iconic scene like Simba being chased down by vultures, right? And so they were a subject I wanted to cover. And I guess in some part, I've always seen myself as an in-betweener, like never quite fitting in, and vultures don't quite fit in. So that was why I kind of approached that. And I knew about the India crisis where there's this veterinary drug called diclofenac that they can't digest properly, and millions of them have died with a massive decline. So researching that, I thought I was going to go to India. I, found this story of vultures rapidly declining in Africa. And Vulpro were one of the first organizations that kind of came up that are really leading the fight, especially in Southern Africa. And I just reached out to them, and Kerry, the owner and founder, she was responsive. And I guess sometimes when making a film, it's the path of least resistance. And she was so accommodating that it just kind of made sense. Something just clicked in me. I'm like, okay, this is it. They've got these incredible facilities. They go across Africa, South Africa, rescuing vultures, and they also have a vulture restaurant where they put out carcasses to feed the local wildlife. So I thought, wild vultures, sorry. So I thought, well, this kind of ticks all the boxes, and this is where I can really have an all-encompassing story with a really low student budget. Everything just fell into place in that respect.
That's really amazing, and I like how that you kind of intended to go one direction, but ultimately you kind of landed in another direction once you finally got into making it. Now, the film reminded me a little bit of the stunning documentary Cow from a few years back. I don't know if you've seen that. Albeit yours has a bit more of an optimistic tone to it. Pretty much a full life cycle with an injured bird being brought in at the beginning of the film, rehabilitated, and then almost a year later we see that bird's offspring released into the wild. How important was it for you to have a bit of that optimistic tone in your film for these birds?
The aim of the film was for people to just appreciate vultures and their role. There was even discussions of, well, do we approach it with, let's, have this typical, your assumption of vultures go in guns blazing in that manner, and then you kind of flip it on its head. But then we thought, well, what would be the point in that? They're portrayed like that anyway. So why not just start off with, let's see them as beautiful animals, which they are.
Right. And they truly are.
Yeah, right. And they've been filmed in that light. They've been seen in that light. And so it was really a cohesion of my entire team, from the editing, the music, the sound, and the visuals, to just really have this combination of making sure that, although there are dark moments in the film and quite emotional moments, that you're going to come out relatively optimistic about the species and really understand them and see them in a new light. So it was really important, and it's nice that you touched on Cow, and I guess that was, films like that are kind of the approach of how do we take the audience on a journey as if you're going from moment to moment. And that was really important as well, because we thought, well, that would, engage the audience because they themselves have been taken on a journey, and that will help immerse them in really appreciating this animal and almost being with that animal as it goes through that journey too. So yeah.
And I think, and you mentioned the score, the music a minute ago. Music was amazing, especially towards the end of the film when we're getting to that point where the offspring is being released back into the wild, and some beautiful shots of bird flying, and they just look so majestic. Something that's I don't think a lot of people normally associate with vultures. How did you work with that music team? And you mentioned the editor as well, to kind of drive home that optimistic impact that we reach at the end of the film.
Yeah, Sasha, my composer, she's just unbelievable. And Maria, my editor, we knew that we really wanted a crescendo towards the end. And talking to Sasha, she approached it with strings and said, this could be really emotional, but also have kind of an optimistic feel, like you feel something for the bird being released. And we actually got in a string quartet to record this beautiful piece that she made. Honestly, even before the visuals were put over the recording, it was just very emotional to hear it for the first time, just unabashed without them, the sound mixing, etc. It was, and we just knew it would match. And then obviously for the visuals, my editor, we knew that we always planned that the release would be at the end, and it was a case of holding one shot for quite a while, even though I really tried to focus on that bird, but kind of it going out of focus. It was like it was, away from us and approaching freedom, but that was totally unintentional. So yeah, thank you. So sometimes it's lightning in a bottle and an accidental moment. Sometimes it's a lot of pre-planning and just as I said before, like cohesion with the team. Everyone was so on board. Everyone really fell in love with vultures even before I went out there to film them. And we all had a vision for it. And I think that was so important, that everyone had this feeling and everyone could have autonomy over the way, the role that they played through making this film. And just really, really grateful for everyone involved. And, especially Sasha, making those musical pieces just really brought the emotion into it.
Yeah, it definitely did. And based on kind of the list day one, when the bird is brought in at the beginning, and then I figured 300 and something towards the end, you're obviously working with this group for at least a year just in filming, probably more so even, setting things up ahead of time. Talk a bit about the challenges you faced as a filmmaker, working with the group, but also kind of devoting a large portion of your life and all of your time to this project.
Yeah. So, I'll let you into a little secret, is I only filmed for 2 months.
Okay.
But the reality is it genuinely takes that much time to raise a bird, rescue a bird. And so what we wanted to do is kind of portray the amount of time it takes and the effort that it takes for these animals to be rescued, rehabilitated, and then them being part of contributing to the wild through breeding of offspring. But in terms of it was a year of pre-planning, a year of development. So it took up a large portion of my life, and 2 months is still a long time. It's really intense, and there was never a day of something not happening. And it was just really, the crew at Volpro, the team there, just kind of allowing me to observe and just being part of their lives for 2 months as well, whilst they're committing so much time and dedicating, they're doing it 24/7.
Right.
Rescuing birds all the time, and especially during the breeding season and monitoring the chicks, etc. So yeah, it's a large commitment, and it just allowed me to kind of immerse myself in that, and hopefully that helped the audience immerse themselves into those scenes as well.
Yeah, it definitely did for me. Now your film ends with a brief title card reminding viewers that I think it was 7 out of 11 of the vulture species in Africa face extinction, and that their populations have been declining quite severely. With that in mind, what do you hope to achieve with this film as it relates to these magnificent animals?
Yeah, so the vision of the film was always, we want this to reach as many people as possible, and for them to fall in love with the vultures and to have a new appreciation of such a villainized creature. And yeah, those statistics are bleak. So it's kind of a bittersweet ending where this beautiful moment happens, and then all of a sudden this card comes in. But it's just a reminder that this is very hopeful, but at the same time, this is the reality that they face. And I'd also like this film to, reach audiences in Africa and hopefully festivals there. But so I want it to have, I guess, as global an impact as possible. and where possible, almost have a conservation impact where people can see that and be like, okay, we need to do something, because without them, there's kind of a catastrophic outcome. And also just appreciate that these animals are just as beautiful as any other, animal that we enjoy, like a panda or a lion or a rhino. They're no different. Just their actions are a little bit different.
Sure. Yeah.
You know.
Now, as a Student Academy Award finalist, and congratulations for that, are there any festivals or screenings or anything else coming up where people can check out the film if they want?
So currently, I know that the film is at Rotterdam International Wildlife Film Festival, Rotterdam, and that is in November, I believe. But that is, as far as I'm aware, that's the only other festival that I'm in at the moment. But as soon as the festival season's over, I'm hoping to really just get this online and maybe approach either a small streaming platform, or just get this, available either for free or for people to watch. So in time, I would like this to be as available as possible, because that's the aim.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Well,
I have a couple of questions not specifically related to the film, but before I move on, is there anything else you want to touch on about The Undertakers?
Just that it wasn't, it wasn't just me, it was my team, and they made this film as much as I did. And I just really thankful for everyone involved. And the film is the sum of its parts. And yeah, it wouldn't be the film without everyone's input. I was just steering the ship, coasting along. But no, it was an amazing effort from everyone, and I'm really proud of the way it's turned out.
Excellent. Well, this might be the hardest question I ask, but if you had to pick your top 3 films of all time, what would they be?
It's really hard. This is
one of the ones that always stumps everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't include The Lord of the Rings because there's 3 films in one there. But if I was to pick out films that have really stayed with me all my life, probably City of God, Pulp Fiction, and Trainspotting.
Excellent. Good choices there. And ones that have been recommended a couple times, I think, at least in Pulp Fiction and City of God. And I was just going through some old ones the other night, and I remember seeing those names coming up a couple times. Similar question. If you could invite any 3 movie characters to your next dinner party, who would they be and why?
This is also a really hard question. They're very good. I think, I don't know if this says a lot about my personality, but I imagine I'd like a fun but kind of crazy dinner. So I'd probably have Winnie the Pooh there. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but, lover of food.
Okay. Need some honey-related dishes for that.
Optimistic, yeah, and very philosophical, actually. And I guess, I really love villains. So I probably would have the Joker there because, whether that's Joaquin Phoenix or, or the Dark Knight. And I think just because sheer insanity.
Yeah.
And then also just because, I'd already have Ellen Ripley from Alien.
Okay. Very interesting combination there. I'm not sure how the second 2 work with Winnie the Pooh, but I'd be interested to see what happens.
I know, right?
Now, do you have any books that you could recommend that you've read recently? They could be fiction or nonfiction and don't have to be related to movies.
Yeah, well, I'm currently reading a book called Underland, and it's actually about all of the cave systems and underground networks underneath our cities, and also natural formations, and an exploration into what they tell us about humanity, but also early civilization. It's really philosophical. It's not film related. I want it to be made into a film, but I'm finding it fascinating. I didn't realize there's, a mirror of basically Paris underneath the city. There's cave systems that have entire ecosystems and cloud systems, and it's a really good journey, and I guess I'd recommend it because you're discovering something you never knew existed, and there's a lot of philosophy in there as well, and it might make you feel claustrophobic.
That sounds fascinating. I'll have to check that one out for sure.
Yeah.
And last thing before we wrap up, do you have any other projects that you're working on right now? And also, where can people follow you on social media to keep apprised of any festivals that this film is going to be going to?
I'm currently developing some ideas, nothing solid at the moment, but I would love to make a film about de-extinction. Think Jurassic Park, but in real life, where there's a few scientific possibilities of bringing extinct species back. And I would love to touch on that and just talk about just the ethics and morality, but why we could, but why we might not. So, I think Jurassic Park was a good warning sign, but yeah. And in terms of following me, you can get me on Instagram at Zac Wild Film.
Wonderful. We'll put a link to that in the show notes so people can follow you and keep tabs on what you're working on. Well, Zac, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciated you sharing your film with me and hearing a little bit about the making of the film and everything that you went through to do that. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you again to my guest today, Zac Lazarou. His short film, The Undertakers, was selected as a finalist for the 2024 Student Academy Awards. The Oscar Project podcast is written and produced by me, Jonathan Eacherberg, with editing assistance from Joshua Eacherberg. Please come back for my next episode where I speak with Daniel Salas, director of the short film Wired. Until then, I hope to see you at the movies.